Alright, hello everyone, my name is Diego Racinos Walsh, and today I'll be talking about tiny houses. Now most of you probably don't know what tiny houses are, so I'll give you a definition. Tiny houses are actually just small houses, definitely smaller than this room, anywhere from a range of 200 square feet to 400 square feet. Now even sometimes they may qualify underneath below 200 square feet. It all depends on how you build it and who builds it. And the proposition I'll be claiming is that tiny houses have significant benefits to young purchasers over traditional homes. And my first claim that I'll be able to say to defend that is that tiny houses are financially stable, tiny houses are environmentally friendly, and also tiny houses give individual homeowners planning benefits, which I'll talk about later. Now, the first point I said, tiny houses are financially stable. That means that when you have a tiny house, you don't really have a big mortgage or big payments you have to pay that you would get from a traditional home. As in, from the average cost of tiny homes are from a range from $20,000 to an upward of $50,000, and that's from an article from Ann Brenoff from the Huntington Post. It's about another person's tiny house story, you could call it. And even sometimes you can even build one below $20,000. Now that's pretty low compared to a traditional home that runs from, I can talk about the price about that later. And the second point from financial stability is it's easier to have no credit card debt. As in, tiny house owners usually have zero credit card debt, but 89% of them have less credit card debt than the average American citizen. Now, it doesn't mean if you're an older American citizen or a younger American citizen, you don't know when or how you get caught up in credit card debt. Usually it's because you have to make payments on payments. And from a statistic from the Tiny House Movement website, which I actually got from the Homeowners Association website, is that most Americans have 1/3 or half of their income dedicated to the roof over their heads. Now that can be a big difference when you actually have a tiny home. If you have a tiny home that you can purchase from a company, they actually can kind of do like a mini mortgage plan, as in the payments are a lot smaller, but they are almost like a plan from a traditional home. Or you can actually just pay it all up front, which would be a great benefit as into the start of your career or retirement of your life, because without a credit card debt or big house payments to make, you can be free of a list of other things. Now, my second point I would be talking about is that tiny houses are environmentally friendly. Since tiny houses advocate living simpler and more sustainable, tiny houses actually have been brought up to solve the problems of overpopulation and amount of space still left on the planet, but as well as the homeless problem. See, most homeless people were created from being foreclosed out of their traditional home, or thrown out, or didn't have high enough income to keep up with competition in society. With tiny homes, that can actually help solve that, as in they can actually purchase more, or actually get a home and no longer be homeless and actually work towards their life or work towards what they actually want to be in life. My other point would be from environmentally friendly is that tiny homes are all solar powered. They use gray water, which is recycled water, to work their irrigation system and most of their toilet system. The toilet system is as well as also using compostable toilets, which is when you flush, the water gets recycled as well, but also most of the waste and all the other is put back into the ground and used as compost. And for some people, they have tiny homes on farms, they have tiny homes in backyards, and that actually can just help the environment around them as well. And as well as reduce their usage. Since they're so small, a traditional home uses a larger amount of water, of heat and energy, all of that. When you downsize it all to a tiny home of maybe 1/4 of a traditional home, you reduce all of your usage by a lot, and actually definitely reduce your carbon footprint. Now, the last point I'll be talking about is that tiny houses have planning benefits for the individual homeowner. Now that means it's easier to reach their dreams and goals easier. Because it can go from you're a college graduate, you come out of college wanting to have a home, not really wanting to go back to your parents' house, you can purchase a tiny home depending on how long you've worked and how much money you have. Or if you want to build it yourself, there are plans on almost free plans available online for tiny houses. But also with tiny houses, like I said before, you don't have the big burdens of a traditional home's mortgage where you have to pay over 30 years. And from the Homeowners Association website, there's that the average American has a cost of a standard sized home is approximately $272,000. If you add another $209,000 interest on a 4.25% 30-year loan, which is the typical mortgage rate that you get, it comes out to be $481,794. Now that's not even counting where you are. That's actually depends on it just depends on where you are. And the last is you don't really have the burdens of a traditional home, as in chores and garden maintenance. That just adds on more money that you have to pay and have to worry about. And instead of trying to really not really kind of take money out of the issue and trying to really reach of what dreams you want to reach or what goals you want to do, like if you want to travel, it can be a lot affordable and a lot of range. And again, my proposition is that tiny houses have significant benefits to young purchasers over traditional homes. And thank you for your attention.
All right, Diego, well, the proposition's clearly identified. There's a very good preview of what the structure is going to be. I'm not exactly sure that the controversy is on whether or not tiny homes are beneficial so much as if they're desirable or if they fulfill the needs of especially young purchasers. By the way, some of the arguments that you present never seem to be focused on young purchasers. When you're talking about the environment, for instance, there doesn't really seem to be any connection to the young purchasers in that particular situation. The financial issue, there's, I guess, a general assumption that young purchasers are less financially able to purchase a regular home, although that's an assumption. There's not really any data that tends to support this. As I was listening to this, I'm thinking, what's the substantial difference between a tiny home and a tiny apartment? And the difference is that you own the home. But what value does the home accrue? What substance does it have? A resale value? I mean, when most people buy a home, it's not just a place to live. They're often making an investment. Are these tiny homes going to have that same kind of financial value down the road? Are they going to grow in proportion to the investment that you've made? Or are you going to be lucky to get your money back? I think we need to have a little bit more information on those sorts of things. The environmental issue, all of these secondary points are clearly labeled in the speech, so it's very easy to follow. You give good explanations on some of the points. I think a couple of them you provide some data on. I'm not exactly sure, I'm still not sure how the credit card issue is relevant to the points you're talking about, except that it's a debt issue, and therefore if you have a smaller debt because you bought a smaller house, then I could see why that would affect your general credit issue. But you seem to be going off on a tangent about credit card debt and then paying on interest on interest and that sort of thing, and I didn't really see how that was connected to the tiny home issue. The environmental benefit, I guess it depends a little bit. Is it not possible for traditional homes to be designed to use gray water systems for their water, to have solar panels and those sorts of things? Why is it unique to tiny homes? And to me, the big controversy on this is whether or not a lifestyle in a tiny home is sustainable. 400 square feet is not a lot of room. It's about half the size of this room. And, I love my wife, but I'll tell you what, if I had to live with her in a room this size, there may be huge financial consequences. I'd be divorced and having to be paying her because it would drive me crazy. I think that there are issues here, and the issues that you talk about are the kinds of issues that salespeople would be arguing for, but I'm not sure that they're where the controversy is on the subject. So I think that you could do a little bit more on that. You did an okay job citing some information on costs. You had hypotheticals on mini mortgages. You did have the cost issue on traditional homes. I did think that you did a nice job providing information there. I think it's presented very effectively, so the idea is appealing. But again, I think the bigger issues have to do with, are these kinds of things sustainable? Can people function and live in them? Somebody who just gets out of college, if you're buying a tiny home and it's just you living in it or you and your dog, maybe that's perfectly fine. But how long can somebody live in one of these places, and especially if they're having a family? Are there any limitations, for instance? Are there any legal limitations on people being able to utilize these things? Because if there aren't, I'd like to put about 20 of these in my yard and start selling them, because I could use the money. All right, thank you.